Hey there, welcome to ABC. It's another edition of Angie's Book Club, hence the ABC. Do you like that?
I do.
All right, this is another Angie. Do you remember an amazing book called The Hate You Give? And down the side, Thug, thug. So you get this impression that this is a book about thugs. But it came out at a time when America was probably in a place that we'd not seen it before in a long time. Lots of police brutality, lots of shootings. And we will talk about The Hate You Give, but I want to tell you about Angie's new book. Oh, Nic Blake and the Remarkables. Nic, hear me calling you Nic. Angie is here. As you can see, we've met before. We like to have a laugh. Angie, it's good to have you back in the UK.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
How long are you intending to stay?
I am here for about a week doing several events. I've already done one event where I got to speak to about 1,300 school kids.
Amazing.
Via live stream and in person, so it was great. So
That is good.
I'm happy to be here, happy to be back in normal standing again.
Yeah. And because you're here, it's because there is another book on the horizon. And I know that there have been other books, but I'm getting off the tube station and I'm seeing these posters. I'm driving down the road and I'm seeing these posters. And I'm looking at the little girl and Nic Blake and the Remarkables. And then I went, hold on. Angie Thomas. She's done it again. She's gone from a fairly heavy book to, I'm going to say, more lighthearted, even though Nic Blake, she is a character. So let's talk about where the character of Nic comes from, because she's a character. She's remarkable, but she doesn't live in a remarkable world. So it's almost like she doesn't fit in. And even though she's expressing her gifts, in some stages, in some places, she can appear quite troublesome.
Yeah.
You're smiling.
Absolutely. I've wanted to write this story for a long time. I've wanted to write a story about Black kids going on magical adventures for a long time. I was a huge fantasy fan growing up. Huge fantasy fan. So I loved the Chronicles of Narnia. Okay. I loved Harry Potter, but I did not see girls like me at the forefront of those stories. Okay. And so when you don't see yourself in those kinds of books, it makes you think, am I worthy of that kind of story? And I remember when I was out promoting The Hate You Give and meeting a lot of younger readers or young kids who were like, oh, I want to read it, but my mom doesn't think I'm old enough yet, especially Black girls. And as a Black woman, one thing I want to do is protect Black girls as much as possible. And as a writer, one way I know to do that is to give them stories that they can see themselves in. So for those younger girls who, they haven't been traumatized by the world, they're still holding on to that innocence. I said, what? Let me give you this magical world. And we can still have conversations about real world stuff. Because in Nic Blake, we still discuss stuff like lynching, racial profiling, police brutality. But it's still a magical adventure. So I wanted to protect their innocence by, still having those honest conversations, but giving them adventure, giving them fun.
Because Nic is very much, she's a daddy's girl.
Yes.
She's definitely a daddy's girl. And without giving too much away, doesn't daddy find himself in a situation where he's innocent but found guilty, and through her magical powers, she is determined to make sure that he comes out innocent? Absolutely.
She sets out to save her dad from a crime she does not think he committed, but it seems like all the odds are against him. And I thought a lot about the kids I know back in the States who maybe their parents are incarcerated, or maybe they are witnessing their parents go through these things and they're like, what do I do? How do I save them? And I'm sure there are kids like that here, and they feel powerless and they feel hopeless. So I want to give them this young girl who's like, you know what? I have some power. I'm going to figure out how to use it to fix this.
She's not always trusted with her powers, though, is she?
No.
There's some laugh out loud parts in here, but she is absolutely determined to use her powers. And I think also because we haven't had as yet on this level a Black superhero, I just got the impression that come hell or high water, I'm going to use my powers. I don't care what you think. You might think that I'm being rude or difficult, but she is a determined young girl. And for me, it was the determination more so than the powers.
Absolutely, because that's her power. And that's really what I wanted to show young girls, young kids, period. Your power lies within you. It can be your determination. It can be your creativity. Your gifts are your powers, you know. There's a line where her dad tells her, "You're the only gift you need." And that's what I want young girls especially to come away from with reading this, is that you're the only gift you need. You have everything that you need inside of you to change your world.
It was also really nice to have a daddy-daughter relationship so much at the forefront of the book. And for me, it was about girls holding on to their daddies and daddies teaching their girls how they should be treated when they let go of daddy's purse, daddy's wallet.
Yeah, when they let go.
When they let go. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But you know, that's important for me too, to show that, because so often there's this idea that black fathers don't exist,
Or don't stick around.
or don't stick around, and it's a lie. You know, they do exist, they do stick around, and I love paying homage to that. So I got a chance to do it this time with this strong father-daughter relationship, you know, and her loving her dad so much that she's willing to go all out to save him.
Yeah, so lovely. I'd like to tap onto The Hate You Give. I know this isn't the reason that you're here in the UK at the moment, but one of the things that I loved about that book was the way that it really sucked me in, because I needed to get to the end of this story. Also with The Hate You Give, it became a film. That turnaround was very, very quick.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I mean, the book was out one minute, and then the next thing you know, there were film rights. And I think because the subject at the time was so current. One of the things that I do find when you read a book and then see the film, or vice versa, you come out feeling quite disappointed. But I must say, on this occasion, it was very much in sync. Did you have anything to do with that?
You know, I was consulted a lot. My opinions mattered. I wasn't a decision maker, but my opinions mattered greatly. And I have to give props to the director, especially George Tillman. I was a fan of his work beforehand. And when he came on, he was like, "I want you involved. I want you there on set. You know, I'm going to hit you up, ask you questions about things." Like George would ask me, "So what kind of car should they drive? You know, what should the house look like?" And then next thing I know, he's like, "Okay, so this is what we got." And it's based on what I just gave him, the feedback I gave him. So from everything from small stuff to big things, he wanted my input. He valued it. And I think that came across on screen.
Yeah. How did you get Common? I need to...
That was George. That was George's. Look, I have a picture. My mom's Facebook profile picture for the last 6 years is a picture of her and Common on set. I will have to show you afterwards. But like, George did that, and he was an awesome man, just kind, but also so in the know.
Yeah.
You know.
But he fitted the character. I didn't see... Having read the book, I'm going to be honest, I didn't see Common. Watching the film,
You were like,
I then
yeah.
saw Common.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no. He was
Very,
great.
very mild-mannered, very straight up, and I'm assuming Common is the same. It really did work. Angie, what is next for you? I know you've got... Is there a follow-up coming up to The Hate You Give? We're going back in time for the
prequel.
Yes.
Yeah, the prequel to The Hate You Give is out now. It's called Concrete Rose, and it's about Star's dad, Maverick, when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
We may be able to do something with that on screen, you know, but right now, because of the writer's strike in America, everything is on hold, including Nic Blake. I'm working with someone amazing for Nic Blake. Can't talk about it, you know, can't sign papers yet or anything, but it's gonna happen. This person is like behind it 1,000%, and he's gonna do a great job. So I'm super excited about that. But also, I get to have more say in Nic Blake. I'm writing the script.
Oh, wow.
I am going to be an involved producer. I'm going to be way more involved, have way more say. I'm going to have way more of an impact this time around. So it's important for me to do that.
Your writing goes from quite adult to childlike. Where do you see your main area of writing, or are you quite happy to be as broad as you are? You were saying, you know, I mean, I'm talking to you about Common. I remember the track The Light, you were probably this high. And then yesterday, you're now talking to kids in schools. So you're really covering quite a few demographics. Yeah. Where do you see yourself lie, or are you happy to follow those demographics?
I'm happy to just do a little bit of it all. I want to do picture books for the toddlers. You know, I want to do one about my dog Kobe.
Check out Twitter. We see.
He has an Instagram. It's Kobe Thomas Official on Instagram. But I want to do a picture book about him. Like, you know, what if Kobe ran the world? You know, I want to do. I try to focus on kids in all age ranges. That's really what I want to do. But even with writing Nic Blake, I felt like Nic was a letter to those not so young girls and not so young women who read The Hate You Give and they saw themselves in Star. But for so many of us, we may have trauma. We may have things that we've experienced in our past. And sometimes we need a little love letter to that little girl that's still within us, who wanted to have that freedom, who wanted to have adventure, who wanted to have a world of magic. For me, that's what Nic Blake is. Yeah. Nic is who Star and Bree from On the Come Up would be if they didn't have the trauma. Yeah. You know, so Black girls, Black women, we need that, you know. So I think for me, my core demographic, Black girls, Black women, no matter the age.
Star was, she needed holding, she needed loved, she needed reassuring, because she was put in a very, very difficult position in The Hate You Give. One of the things I do want to touch on with Nic Blake, and I know we're going backwards and forwards, there is a thread that goes through this that connects to dementia. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I was about 12, the same age Nic is in the book, my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia. And, you know, usually dementia for a lot of people is slow onset, but for her, it was kind of sudden. It was just like one day, she didn't recognize me. She didn't recognize my mom. She wanted to get out the house. She thought we were strangers. She wanted to go home, even though she was home. And at 12, that was traumatic for me. You know, this is my grandmother who I love and adore, and suddenly she doesn't recognize me. And I remember feeling powerless. I remember feeling like, what can I do to fix this? And there's really nothing you can do. So, like, from the age of 12 until I was about 20, we dealt with this with my grandmother until she passed away. And it was just, you know, some days she knew us, some days she didn't. And then it went from my grandmother who once would feed me as a toddler. I'm suddenly having to feed her by hand, you know, and I'm suddenly having to help my mom bathe her when she was the one who would give me baths, you know. And it's the thing about, I don't think we talk enough about how with Alzheimer's and dementia, it changes the dynamics. And suddenly you go from being, especially if you're a child or a teenager, preteen like I was, you go from being the one who's getting the care to the one who's helping to give the care. Right. And so it was traumatic for me. So when I was thinking about what do I want to do with Nic Blake, what is it that I want her to try to save her dad from? It's an outcome like what I had to deal with. So in their world, in the remarkable world, which is run by manifestors who are Black folks, mostly descendants of enslaved people, in their world, they don't do prisons. Because, you know, we had a lot of discussions in 2020 about prison reform in the States, especially, and how bad it is. So I said, what if we have a world with no prisons? But for them, what they consider a punishment is, what if you just forget everything? And so Nic wants to save her dad from that fate. She wants to save him from not remembering her. Because as a kid who went through seeing someone forget them, I would want to save my grandmother from that. So it just felt like the right way to go.
I love the way that even though you're writing this fantasy book, you've clipped in reality as well. Same thing with The Hate You Give. With all of your writings, the story is there, but there's a root of reality in it. Absolutely. So when you are reading, you're actually feeling the characters, feeling the stories. And in some cases, even if it is just from watching the news, there is a level of identification. So when you are researching characters, do you tap into something that you've been through, or something maybe that's on the news, or something that is current, to weave it into the story?
It's a little of all of those things. I will take some things that I've gone through on a personal level and maybe put that into the character. Like for instance, with Star, she went between those two different worlds. That was me.
Yeah.
You know, I lived in the hood and went to the mostly white
Yeah.
upper class school
Yeah.
and had to be two different people. You know, with Bree and On the Come Up, she wants to be a rapper so she can get her family out of poverty. That was me. You know, the only character I'm not similar to or didn't take anything from my own personal experience is probably Maverick, because I was never in a gang.
Okay.
I never sold drugs. I was never a teen parent. But I know people who went through that. So I like to take things sometimes from my own experiences, because I feel as if, you know, I meet a lot of people who want to write, and what they tell me all the time is, oh, I've been through so much in my life that I could write a book about myself. And what I always tell them is, don't put everything in one book.
Save it.
Don't put your whole story in one book. Come up with some characters and put those things into those characters, and you will find yourself writing your story but through different lenses. And I think that's one of the better ways to go about it. So that's what I do sometimes, but I also take things from other people as well.
Yeah. Angie Thomas is the writer of Nic Blake and the Remarkables, and it is a remarkable book. I love it. Like I said, when I saw the posters, I thought, my goodness, she's got to come back to the UK. I need to see her. Angie, well done. I know you can't talk about the next stage of the book, but can you confirm that there is the next stage of this book?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is a series. I'm working on the second one now. So there are going to be at least 3, if not more, books. At least.
Angie, always a pleasure.
Thank you.